So what is the outlook for the next month or so? Well, coming up to Christmas it's going to get very quiet indeed on just about every front, because most people have got better things to do than think about a new job. It tends to pick up again as we get into January, as people have the New Year's resolutions and decide that life is too short to stay with the current psychopathic boss and go and try and find a new one who might be slightly more pleasant. They do exist in law. There are some nice bosses as well as some pretty awful ones. So as it stands, November is going to be a quiet month, I think, and December, and then as we get more into the new year, then things will pick up and we'll be back on the recruitment cycle, increasing both locum and permanent placements. The REC, which is the Recruitment and Employers Confederation, has issued their report for November to say that generally permanent vacancies are up, locum vacancies are up, and there is a big shortage of good candidates for these roles coming through. But I'm not so sure that this is so applicable in the legal profession, where I think there are quite a few uncertainties which are affecting us all on most fronts. So we shall see what happens generally, but I don't think it will be the same. General practice solicitors have traditionally fallen into three camps. Firstly, you have the older solicitors who date back to times when solicitors did just about everything, from conveyancing, family, wills and probate, open and close companies, send people bust, pop down the county court, deal with a commercial litigation case, and also fairly newly qualified candidates who've had the pleasure working for a sole practitioner on the high street. But apart from these two groups, there are very few other real general practice solicitors left out there. So firstly, what is a general practice solicitor? Well, for most firms, it's someone who can deal with conveyancing plus something else. It tends to be family law or commercial property or wills and probate coupled with conveyancing. So if the market gets quiet on one of those fronts, the solicitor can immediately jump into the other field. The problem is, of course, since the 1990s, most solicitors have specialised in one area, and quite rightly so, being that the vast majority of insurance claims tend to crop up where somebody's been negligent. If you're specialising in one area, I suppose the argument is you're less likely to get an insurance claim against you because you're more concentrated in that area and tend to know what you're doing. So it's very hard to find them, but there still seems to be quite a demand from solicitors' firms to try and recruit in this area. So we get requests all the time for conveyancers who can do wills and probate, or family solicitors who can do conveyancing. And the reality is that there just don't exist these types of solicitors in the mainstream. So, for example, in wills and probate, we have about 1,000 lawyers on our books for wills and probate work. Ranges from solicitors right down to paralegals with 6 months' experience. But there's about 1,000 of them. Out of those 1,000, less than 100 will do any other field of law, and out of those, very few will actually cover the other field of law to an extent that they'd be able to deal with it all the time in practice, or indeed that they would even want to deal with it in practice. So, although it's perfectly possible to find solicitors to cover wills and probate plus another area, it's more likely that in reality it's not going to be the easiest of pieces of recruitment to do. So it's much better to have a think about what you want to do. Do you want a wills and probate and conveyancing solicitor, or can you also consider taking on a wills and probate solicitor part-time and a conveyancing solicitor part-time? I'm just staring at some dogs which are barking angrily at me wandering past. So we think it's better to look at part-time staff than to look at somebody on a full-time basis to do both areas. If you get somebody doing both areas, then chances are if they leave, you've then got to recruit again in both areas. If you have two part-timers, then you only have to replace one if one leaves. The other benefit of having part-timers, which quite a lot of solicitors firms fail to appreciate, I think, is that if you're part-time, your hours are a lot less, but you still have to fit in the work, which does mean that they tend to be quite productive. And in fact, there is an argument to say that a part-timer is considerably more productive than a full-timer, because they're never going to be sat there at 3:30 in the afternoon feeling like they need to have a siesta, because they know the following day they're not in work and they've got 30 files to get through before they leave to go home that night. So think carefully before wanting a general practice solicitor. They do exist, they're very rare, tend to be expensive, and there are other solutions that can be cheaper and more effective. 10 top tips to relocating for solicitors. We come across relocation quite a lot because we quite often help people moving from one area to the other. So here are our 10 top tips. Firstly, don't move without finding work first. Easier said than done, but it's a fairly good idea, because if you find work, it's certainly a lot easier and lot less stress. Quite a lot of people move and then start looking for work, and we think they put themselves under quite a bit of stress when they're attending interviews, because they know that they've got to find work and that they've got to pay their mortgage. The problem is that it becomes quite a lot of fairly high pressure for them at that point, and they don't necessarily do well in interview. If you can, have a look around for work first. If you get work, great, because you can always go down and start work, find some temporary accommodation, rent out in the week, travel home at the weekends. It's not the most ideal if you've got a family, but we think it's a better way of doing it than moving somewhere first and then looking for work. So that's our first piece of advice. Second, think about the job, not the location. If you start looking at a vacancy because it's in a certain town and that's ideal for you, it can blinker your vision as to whether or not it's actually a suitable vacancy for you, because there are firms out there who might not necessarily be ideal for you, but you're looking at it because you're thinking, oh well, if I take a role with that firm, then I can work in that town, and if I'm working in that town, then it's easier for me to go and pick my child up from school, which is all great, and we understand why people would want to do that, but you need to think about it very carefully, because if you do take a role for the wrong reasons, you're stuck in it. It's much harder to leave a role than it is to start out in the right one in the first place. I'm struggling here to find the right page and balance it, and balance the video camera at the same time. The other things we were thinking about, think about the location. It's great to live somewhere like this. You can see where we are. Look up, right out in the countryside. We're about 12 miles from Chester here. Beautiful place. It's great to work here. It's a real privilege. But certain times of the year we have to have winter tyres on. We have a four-wheel drive. You're about to see a car with a sheep trailer going past because we're in the middle of sheep country, and it gets very cold in the winter, and the commuting from one side of here to the other can be quite complicated at times in the winter. If you're not comfortable with that, then you do need to think carefully about it. The same thing if you're travelling to a city, you're going to relocate to a city and you're planning to travel across to another one. If the train travel's not particularly good, it might be a beautiful place to live. It's not going to be much fun for you travelling every day on an awful train journey. I think of Leeds to Sheffield as a very good example, unless things have changed in recent years. Consider the impact of relocation on your children. There's nothing worse than moving with a child in their teenage years who feels that they've been uprooted from one place and stuck into another without any control over it. It causes terrible problems, and it's something to bear in mind. Just make sure you think about the children. Consult them all the time as well. It's a really good idea. Turn into a private investigator. Go out and have a look at the area that you're moving to and check that it is for you. You might move in to a certain town and discover that HGVs go through there every Thursday night when the M6 is shut, or you go someplace else and find that all the local services are closing down in the next few years. Certainly worth having a look at. Look for work. Don't assume that if you can't see jobs advertised on the Law Society Gazette site or on our website at 10%.co.uk or on the law firm sites that it doesn't exist. There are areas of the country where people don't necessarily advertise because they know that there's so few solicitors out there. I can think of places like Cornwall, Devon, up in the Lake District where there are vacancies, but the firms don't advertise them because they've been around for so long. If you keep advertising, it's just extra money when the candidates don't exist. So it is worth inquiring. If you go into an area, contact someone like me, because we can make discreet inquiries for you without anybody knowing who you are, for example, which can be quite a good way of doing it. Be prepared to compromise on location. It can be great to go and move into a seaside village overlooking a beach and the sun's going down over the horizon. But if that means that you've got to travel for 2 hours every day there and back to get to work, you might not appreciate the view quite so much after about 5 years. And the view isn't everything. I mean, looking around me here, it's fantastic. There's a beautiful view. But after a while, you don't notice the view anymore if you live in places like this. And the same applies in city and townscapes as well. If you're looking out of your window and looking down at a beautiful view, it's great, but if you're travelling hours every day simply to get to work in another area, it does sort of impact on the view slightly. Enjoy the process. Don't get stressed by it. Easier said than done. Very hard thing to do. But if you start getting stressed about the whole thing, it impacts on you, it impacts on your family. Get the kids involved, make sure the children have a chance to take part. So the last time our family moved, we took our children on the house viewing so they could see what house we were going to be moving into, and for them to feel like they'd helped in the decision that we were making. And then finally, 2 things. Think about locuming if you can't get work. It's a good idea, it's easily done. You can travel to work, it's temporary, so you can go and move and you can have a look around at locum opportunities to keep you receiving an income. If you do want to try locuming, haven't done it before, there is a free guide at www.interimlawyers.co.uk, and you can get that by going onto the website. It's free of charge. And finally, our other top tip was to avoid burning bridges. Don't burn your bridges with your current firm, because you never know when you might need to go back. If it doesn't work out, something falls through, and your current firm have said that there is an opportunity for you to take your old job back. You just never know when that's going to be needed. So just try and be careful when you leave to leave on good terms. Okay, thanks for watching. There seems to be a new area of law coming through at the moment for education law. We've been around for a long time now. I've been in recruitment since April 2000, and it's been very rare that we've actually seen very many of these types of roles dealing with tribunals and local authority meetings, and there's really not been a lot of it. But over the last 2 to 3 weeks we've seen a good number of vacancies coming through, both on the locum and permanent side. So if you're a candidate watching this, then if you can drop us a quick email across just to say that you are dealing with education, it might well be worth it, because you're going to pick up some vacancies off us. So it's good to see a new boom area of law. Hasn't been one of those since conveyancing. Are CVs obsolete? That's the next article we have in this month's Legal Recruitment News. yes, I suppose to a certain extent there is an argument to say you don't really need a CV anymore necessarily, because there's so many other ways of finding out about someone other than just by reading a CV. For example, we were recently at a trade fair at the NEC where the tradesmen were all trying to get us to buy into video CVs, because you can pick up a video, watch it, and it tells you everything about a person that you need to see before you interview them. In fact, you might not even bother interviewing them if you've watched a video of them, because you might not like the look of their cut of their jib, so to speak. And most of them were arguing, together with a good number of motivational speakers and other people, that there isn't really any need for a CV, because you can simply research someone on the internet, find out about them, and not actually have to read a CV. However, we think that's wrong. We think you do need a CV because, firstly, it takes 10 seconds to read through a CV and see the information that you need to make a decision as to whether a candidate is suitable for a job. And that doesn't matter if you're a recruitment agent or an employer. So, for example, if you send us a CV, I'm looking to get information on your name, date of birth perhaps, although we shouldn't really be looking, postal address to see if you're in the vicinity of the job, your previous experience, just to make sure that you've got the right sort of experience to even consider you, and have a quick scout about and see what else is on there. This then leads on to us being able to look at your date of qualification, check you out on the Law Society website. If you're a solicitor, make sure you exist, and also do a quick search of your name on Google, and make sure that there's nothing too awful lurking there. The whole thing takes us about 30 seconds, if not slightly more, and it means that we can filter and go through a good number of CVs extremely quickly. If we had to sit and watch a video of every candidate who came into us, it's very unlikely that we'd get very far, and I certainly wouldn't be leaving work at 5 o'clock at any time soon. So our recommendation is that CVs are definitely not obsolete. Video CVs seem a good idea if you've got the time to watch them. And checking out people on Google or LinkedIn can lead to adverse effects. So if you search for Jonathan Fagan, which is me, type it into Google, see what you get up. On the 7th thing on page 1 of Google at the moment is an article about how Jonathan Fagan's been arrested for drug trafficking in central London. I can assure you it's not me, because I'm currently walking along a road in North Wales telling you this, but it's certainly easy to pick things up off the internet that may or not be true, and this is a good example of one of them. Our hourly rate guide for locums has been updated for November, and it will come as no surprise to anyone who's doing locum work that at this time of year the hourly rate drops. So from about April through to September, you can expect top-notch rates. They tend to be the same throughout that time. So as a quick example, a conveyancer working in the southeast would be looking at an hourly rate of £30 to £35 an hour, at the very least, if not slightly more in some cases. You get to November and a locum assignment comes through, and all of a sudden there seem to be quite a few locums available for it, and as a result the hourly rate needs to drop. So if you're looking for locum work at the moment, unless it's wills and probate, be prepared to drop your prices, because the competition out there is fairly stiff. So wills and probate starting at 35, going up to 45, aim at the 35 mark until after Christmas, I suspect. Conveyancing, anything above £25 an hour, probably aiming at around the £30 an hour for most people, I would think would be a reasonable amount. 10% Legal Recruitment operates a low-cost recruitment service for solicitors firms right across the UK. We have about 100 firms signed up to that deal, which basically gives unlimited recruitment for 5 years for a set monthly price. So, for example, if you think in the next 5 years that your firm might need a couple of locums a year, a secretary here and there, a solicitor for to replace someone in the next 12 months, and then seeking to expand a couple of years after that, you seek to take someone else on, then for one set monthly fee you can cover all those recruitment costs, and people do literally save absolutely thousands of pounds by signing up to that deal. You can get details on it by going to www.10percentunlimited.co.uk, or just search 10% Unlimited in any search engine. The cost tends to be minimal. It starts at £60 a month for certain types of firms and goes up to unlimited levels depending on the size of the firm. It's been an extremely beneficial way to do recruitment without incurring huge amounts of costs, and we notice an uptake in that type of service every time there's a downturn in the market, because people want to secure their future. If you sign up for that deal, you've secured your costs for about the next 5 years in terms of recruitment, and it doesn't really matter how much you do. Some firms use us considerably over that time, others tend to do a little bit and then stop. But they've still made their money back and more simply by signing up, because all they're doing is paying for the monthly fee. So if you want further details, you can ring Claire Fagan, who's our recruitment consultant solely dealing with that area of work, and she's available on 0207 127 4343, or you can email her claire.fagan@10-percent.co.uk. So that's it. That's the first legal recruitment news on video that we've done since we started writing the recruitment news back in 2007. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've managed to get this far and you're wondering where I am walking, we're near a village called Clonarmon and Yall in North Wales. It's Denbighshire, near to Mould, and it's freezing. But I'm still wandering along the road doing this, because I thought it might be more useful to some people than to actually have to read a big long article. So thank you for reading. If you want to get in touch with us, please visit our website at www.10-percent.co.uk, or give us a ring 0207 127 4343, or drop us an email to cv@10-percent.co.uk. Thanks for watching.